Welcome back to the Making a Multi-Million-Dollar Med Spa podcast, where we have real conversations about what it takes to run a successful business. Thank you for joining us as we share our day-to-day successes and, even more importantly, failures and mistakes. Listen in as we host some of our peers, colleagues, and other experts in the field. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. This week, Matt is talking with injector extraordinaire Noreen. Noreen Bollinger began in the injectable space over 7 years ago. Since then, she has grown in her expertise so much that she is one of the leading injectors at aesthetic care today. Her steady hand, incredible talent, and honest feedback with clients keep her leading the charge in both injectables and laser treatments. Noreen is also a national trainer for multiple companies including Galderma and Allergan. Join us as she shares her story to aesthetics, tips on growing as a provider, and so much more. Now on to the episode.
Hello, everybody out there in Mint Land and Aesthetic Land. My name is Matt Toronto, and this is Mint's multi-million-dollar med spa podcast. And this is going to be fun because I know this lady very well. I'm with Noreen Bollinger. She is one of our amazing RNs here at Aesthetic Care, and she works at both locations, our Leawood location and our Liberty location. I've actually known Noreen a lot longer than she's worked for us. It's kind of a fun story how this worked out, and we'll talk about it. But Noreen, thank you for doing this. Appreciate it. Noreen easily, and I've worked in this industry forever and ever with 1,600 clinics. She's easily one of the top injectors I've ever been associated with. She's amazing. She's a wizard with the needle. I'm going to embarrass her because I will compliment her a lot in this thing. But she's also a joy to work with. So I think a lot of people, so many people out there listening to this podcast are thinking about getting into aesthetics. And as a consultant, I try to be very honest with people and try to guide them on, hey, is this the right fit for you? Is this not a right fit for you? But also, don't get caught up in a lot of what the reps say. Oh my God, just buy laser or make nose, just do Botox. It does take some effort and work. So I'm really curious about you as an RN. What made you decide to go this route? And when you made that decision, what path did you take?
Great question. So I actually just got into this industry by chance. It kind of fell into my lap. Somebody I knew that was in the industry said, oh, you'd be great at injectables. I didn't even know what Botox was at the time. I was 33. And I was like,
a year ago then? You were 34
Yep.
I'm lying for those who can't see her. She looks very young, but she's older than 33.
That's almost 10 years ago.
There you go.
And so I thought, you know what, I'll give it a shot. And for the first year, I was terrified. If I look back and I think how scared I was that I even stuck with it, I wanted to quit multiple times. My husband would be like, just give it time, you're not going to be perfect. I was terrified that I was going to hurt somebody, I was going to make somebody blind, I was going to give them an occlusion. I had just a horrible fear. But I kind of stuck with it and learned all the anatomy I could.
And how many people did you blind?
Zero.
There you go.
But just some of that healthy fear, which I think is very healthy. So when I am training other people, if you're nervous, you should be. If you're not nervous, chances are you're going to hurt somebody. And so a healthy fear of all the vessels, all the structures underneath the skin, basically.
Well, let me interrupt her. I didn't say this. Noreen has been training for Allergan and Galderma and now RHA, right?
Yep.
For how long have you been a trainer?
Since 2018.
Yeah, so for 4 years now. So she's not just an injector, she also teaches this. So she has a great background there. So I love the fact, because I agree, and this is true even if you relate to sports, the good nervousness that you get, the excitement, but the fear also that you're to making sure that you can focus. Because I do think something wrong in our industry is the idea, I could go to one day of Botox training and I'll be ready.
No, that's a lie.
Or one day of filler training, even more so. But it takes more than that. So your first year, talk about the initial training you went through, and I know you've just done tons of trainings for yourself since, but initially, how did you handle that?
So I followed an experienced injector around for maybe a month, and then I was let out on my own. I had no clue what I was doing. I was terrified. Every day I would pray that I did not get a filler patient on my schedule.
And by the way, I don't think that's the way she would recommend, just following somebody for a month and doing it. No. Okay.
I only injected a couple patients before I was on my own. And so it was terrifying. I just studied. I looked at the anatomy. I did everything I could. And this is back in the day when we don't have all these apps. We don't have all the trainings from the companies. Really, all of our training was us going out, searching and finding it.
Correct.
And so I tried to be as safe as I could, finding the safest ways, learning how to use cannulas really early on to make myself feel a little bit safer. But I would say for the first 2 years, I was scared every time I had a filler patient. I was not only, I wanted to deliver the results that I thought the person wanted, I wanted them to be happy as well as the safest route as well. And so I think that's a good thing. Whenever people come in that I'm training, if they're not scared at all, and I call them cowboy injectors, they're just poking all over the face, the person's not clean. Those are the people that scare me the most. Those are the people that are going to have an issue. And so there's a little bit of healthy fear. When I'm in danger areas, when I'm in the temple and glabella or anything with cannula or with filler now, I try to do it the safest way with cannulas. But I still have a little bit of healthy fear. Like, okay, what could go wrong here? How am I going to make this as safest? I'm going to aspirate, I'm going to use a cannula and different things. And so working through some of that, I think really made me a better injector. And so when I go train and I see somebody that's super nervous or they're shaky at first, I'm like, that's okay. That you should be nervous. If you're not nervous, that's very, very odd. So I think just working through that, if you had told me 10 years ago I'd still be sitting doing injectables, I would have told you that probably wouldn't have happened in my head because I was so scared. But I think just working through that actually makes you a better injector.
Well, and it worked well because obviously you've become quite the master at it. But I will tell you, and I think a great attitude to have in anything, whether it's lasers or injectables, something, is that you're continually trying to learn, and that you're always looking for other ways to educate yourself. What you said is true. You know, when I was young in this industry, there was no internet, there was no YouTube. It's amazing what you can just see on YouTube now.
Right.
And a lot of it is not good, but a lot of it is good. And so I think what I always tell people, I don't care what you're doing as a provider, you better come in with a sponge of a brain.
Right.
And with this not an arrogance that, oh my God, I'm so good, I don't need much training. No, I think you cannot be overtrained.
No, that insatiable need to be trained. I was searching out, I would stalk people, just what are you doing? How are you making this result? Why are you doing this? What's the outcome? And I think you have to have that. And I think that is kind of a personality. You can't teach somebody how to want. That's, you either have it or you don't. But I wanted to be the best that I could, not competing with anybody else, but the best. So I was proud of myself at the end of the day, and then people were happy. And so I always tell people in this industry, never compete with each other. There's enough patience for everyone. Compete with yourself. Could I have done that better? And so when people would come back for their follow-ups, I would always take their after pictures, and they could have been totally happy, but in my head I'm like, oh, I should have put a bit more here. Oh, I went too deep there. Always critiquing yourself and how you can make a better result next time.
And I think that brings up a great point, because I think one thing we all have to understand is that we're human beings and we're not going to be perfect every time. And I think the best injectors like you are a little bit of a perfectionist and you want it to go well every time. But you also know with everybody you inject, it hasn't always gone perfect.
Right.
So I think one thing that I think our listeners will like to hear is, when you have an unhappy client, how do you handle it? Because it's going to happen, okay?
And
you see
yes.
15 people a day, it's not going to be perfect. So. And one thing we do as a clinic is we try very hard to just jump on any unhappiness and try to resolve it. We don't ignore it. We want to take care of these people. And I would say half the time it's the person is a little bit difficult and it's really not any issue. But there's some times where it doesn't do well. So kind of walk through, if you have somebody unhappy, what is your process of handling that?
So I love to see people back for follow-up. So anytime I do Botox or Dysport or neurotoxin, they've never had it before, I want to see them 2 weeks after just to take their before and afters, because a lot of times they don't know what's normal. Is this spot brow normal? Did I put too much in the forehead? I love that, and I feel like that anybody starting out should always see their people back at 2 weeks. I saw all my filler people back at 2 weeks when I first started out because I really wanted to judge myself. How did I do? So if somebody comes back and they're not happy, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I see what you mean. You know what? There's a smidge too much filler in that area. I'm always going to listen to their concerns and then address them. What I can do, I can soften it. I can put a little bit of Hylenex, dissolve just a little bit in that area. Or is it something where they had an expectation, so they have the thinnest lips on the planet, you put one syringe in and they think they're going to be Kim Kardashian, which is not going to happen. And that teaches you to set your expectations. So if I know somebody comes in with really thin lips, you're going to need multiple syringes, probably 2 syringes, not at the same time. Let your lips kind of open up, and then we can put another syringe in. So always trying to meet their expectations, but explain to them what to expect. The other thing I love about working at Aesthetic Care is the autonomy to say, you know what, I did this person, I don't love the way their filler turned out. I'm going to dissolve it, I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to be able to do that because I know I can get a syringe from the rep and I can make that right. You know, a lot of other practices don't do that. So if you don't have a happy client, you don't have the autonomy to say, hey, I got to make that right, which is a great thing here because we get to do that. And I love that because I've worked in a practice where that wasn't the case, and you're trying to make that person happy, but then you have, you know, handcuffs on. So I think making expectations, setting the expectations is the biggest thing that I've learned over the years. There are some people you are not going to make happy. They could look like a supermodel, and
true.
when you're done, and you can do a before and after, and you're like, I could have not done that better. And you just sometimes you just have to let go of that client and say, I don't think we can make you happy, and that's okay. But it does. That's the hardest thing as a provider is I'm a people pleaser. So I want everybody to be happy, and it does. I take it home with me. I think about it. It gives me an upset stomach because I don't want them to be unhappy with what I did because it's a direct result of my abilities.
Well, and it's a great point, and I think this is so true in our industry. I met with a lady the other day, and she's been a great client, and she's a very nice person. But she is so critical of her own skin. And she's pointing at things that she doesn't like that I'm 2 feet away, I cannot see. And I'm saying, okay, now, in polite ways, so tell me what you see, because I got to be honest, I'm right here, and I don't see it, and my guess is you're the only one who does, which is fine, because, you know, what you think matters. But I've always thought one of the most difficult client is one I look at and think, oh my God, your skin is beautiful, and they hate it. I just think that's tough. And I think what you said is you got to be honest.
Well, and you do, and everybody's taking selfies. So you can take 50 selfies, and they're all going to be different. But they'll focus on one that's in a weird light where they see a shadow in their nasolabial fold, they need filler, you're telling them, no, you're going to get too much there, you're going to look like a monkey mouth. But they see that in that picture, and they keep going back to that picture. The hard thing now is social media, TikTok, Facebook, they're seeing things a lot that are filtered, but they don't understand what's filtered and what's not filtered sometimes. And so they see these results and I need this treatment, I need that treatment. And I have to tell them, that thread result you got, that is edited. That's an edited picture. And so letting them understand that is not real life. If you have a magnifying mirror, throw it away because what you're seeing, nobody else sees.
That's right.
And that's the first thing I ask people when they start focusing on their pores. Do you have a magnifying mirror? Almost always they say yes. Because you're seeing something nobody else sees.
10 times magnified, which, you know, the $6 million man would have to be there to do it. So, and I think we're our own worst critic. And this brings up a really good point because I think one of Noreen's greatest skills as an injector is truly explaining what it takes to fill to correction. And I think in fillers in general, there's a misconception that somebody says, okay, what I can afford is 1 cc, but I want you to do my nasolabial folds and my marinette lines and my lips.
No.
And I know you hear that a lot, so talk about how you handle it because you're so good at it.
So I always want to set them up for success. So if you can afford 1 syringe and you need 10, you're wasting your money. Essentially, you're throwing it away. So I tell them, pick one area. We can start with your cheeks, but we're going to correct your cheeks. So if you need 4 syringes in your cheeks, we'll start there. If you can only afford 1 syringe, I don't want to do it at all because you're not going to be happy. And I would want somebody to tell me that. So if 1 syringe is 1 blueberry essentially, and you've lost the volume of a grapefruit, it's not going to do anything. So,
and I that is such a good analogy. 1 syringe is a blueberry.
Blueberry. It's a tiny amount.
Yeah, or it's like 1/5 of a teaspoon or something. Yeah.
It's such a small amount. So making them see that. And the other thing I love to do is I pull up before and afters of people that have let me use their pictures. And I say, this person here, I did 7 syringes on. And look where they started. And then look where you're at. So this is the result for 7 syringes. So I'm always trying to find somebody that I can think, okay, they kind of look similar, and this is how many I did. So they can really, truly understand, no, 10 syringes isn't going to make you look overdone if it's done in the right way. But 1 syringe in somebody that is 70 that's never had anything done is just a drop in the bucket. You're not going to notice a difference. And so I encourage them not to, or if it's somebody that comes in that has so much extra skin, like a client today that, wanted threads. I mean, it was a good inch of skin when you pull it back. It is going to do nothing. You're going to waste your money. You can, pay a couple $1,000s, if you want to, but you're not going to be happy, go see a surgeon, because that's a surgical result. And I think in this industry, so many people have a hard time saying that. And I always say it in a kind way, but I don't want you to spend $2,000 with me today and get 10% of a result. I would rather you go explore all your options, and if surgery is not what you want to do, then you can come back and then we'll do it.
And I think it's great. I've always, probably the best example of that, I think that people have expectations are a lot of times the eyes. And somebody comes in, they've got this huge hooding going on, and they're like, well, I want this here. And I always tell our providers, say, well, the first thing you need to talk about is a bluff, because that's the home run. Okay, we can't do that. Here, what I can do is improve it a little bit and stuff like that, but if you want the best, we've got a great oculoplastic we work with, that's what you wanted. And in fact, for those of you listening who have our e-courses, you know this, we actually have a form that we developed that if somebody wants a treatment that we've told them we do not believe they're going to be happy with, we have them sign that form. Because we can do the treatment, we're not hurting them, right? Like Cool Sculpting is a good example. You know, they're too heavy. Right. They're not going to be happy with the result, but they want it anyway, and their neighbor had, they love it. No, I want it. Okay, we can do it, but we do not feel you're going to be happy. We don't advise you to do this treatment for the results of it, and I need you to sign this thing that we've talked about that. And I think that's important.
It is important. It's really important. I think so many practices just want clients to come in and spend money. They'll do whatever.
They're eager for cash, or for revenue.
People will come in and they're like, yeah, I did a microneedling treatment and they said it was going to get rid of all my acne scarring. I'm like, 1? But I hear that all the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, 1, 10, and you may start to make a dent with just a regular microneedling without radiofrequency and different heat modalities. And so I think that's the hardest thing, is people overselling what something can really do. And I always tell them, I'm going to be brutally honest in a nice way, obviously, but I'm going to tell you exactly what. If you want to get acne scarring, you need 5 Intracell to start with, or Genius to start with, and then come back, and then we're going to do some filler, and then we're going to pop out those acne scars. So I think really setting up expectations.
Yeah, and things like that, like acne scars, it's a long process. It's hard. We can do nice things with them, but it's not one treatment. Okay, it's multiple treatments over time. You know, one thing that we see more and more now that we've been established so long is people coming here to fix other people's, what they see as a mistake. They got filler or Botox, they're not happy with it, and they come. And I know you see a decent amount of these people. So talk about how you handle that. They've gone somewhere else, they don't like their filler, they don't like the way they look, and they come and say, hey, can you help me?
So the first thing I encourage them to do, so say you went down the street and you had gotten filler and it was 3 months ago and it's in your lips and you just hate it, there's lumps and bumps, some of the fillers on the wet mucosa of the lip. The first thing I encourage them to do is to go back and have them dissolve it. So using Hylenex is not cheap. And we can do it here, but I don't know how deep that provider placed the product. I don't know, what plane they were in. I don't know what filler they used. And so I always encourage them to go back. The other thing I think that is really good is if I was that provider and I had somebody that wasn't happy, I would want to know. So have them go back, say, hey, I'm not really happy. Can you just dissolve this? If a lot of times they don't want to go back there. So if they don't want to, I say...
And I'm amazed at how many clinics don't even stock Hylenex. They don't even have it.
Which is crazy.
Yes.
So then I will dissolve it, but obviously we have to charge them because we have to pay for the product. Right. I just hate that somebody's paid for filler and then paying to dissolve it and then paying for me to put it back in. So I'll dissolve it and then I'll re-inject them. And we see it a lot, and we're going to see it a lot more with everybody wants in this industry. So the amount of untrained providers go to a weekend course and then they do filler is insane, and it's just going to get worse. You don't know how sterile they were when they put it in. You don't know if there's any bacteria underneath the skin. So it's kind of scary. And if I see people hopping around, they've been to 10 places in the last year.
That's a red flag.
I really don't want them to come here and I will tell them, I will see you. You can't go anywhere else because I don't know what's in your face. I don't know if there's bacteria sitting under the surface that's just waiting. Some biofilms kind of walled itself off, waiting to be exposed and to come to the surface. So then I will refill them, but I do encourage them. I tell them the more places you go, the more hands that are on your face and injecting things, the bigger you are likely to have a big problem, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that leads to my next point is relationship building, because I do believe, and I always talk about, most women I know, they find somebody who they really like, who cuts their hair. I think you're really loyal to that person. I mean, they don't want to go to anywhere else. I always think, we're burning their skin with a laser. We're sticking needles in their face. So that trust has got to be really good. So when you see somebody for the first time, in your mind, what is your goal as far as that relationship? Because you said you don't really want them going to other places, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't from a business standpoint. So what are some of your relationship building skills, because you've done such a good job of developing a very loyal clientele?
I think the first thing is credentialing yourself, and I think a lot of people have a hard time doing that.
Kind of bragging in a polite way.
Yeah, just telling them why they're here and why you're glad that they're in your chair, but why they should trust you. What your experience is, that you are certified, that you are in the medical industry. I mean, in Missouri, you don't even have to be in the medical industry. There's people in town that are estheticians injecting a medication into somebody's face, which I think is terrifying.
It is.
And just why they should feel happy that they're in your chair. I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing is proving that you produce results.
Mm-hmm.
And so why they shouldn't want to go anywhere else, because you look great, you look natural. People always think how good your skin looks. So I think those are the two biggest things. And then just building rapport. I want to know what your kids are doing. I want to keep up with what's going on in your life. You have a big event. Okay, we got to make sure we get your appointments laid out so you can get everything done in time. I think those are the biggest things, building a relationship, just like you would do with a friend. I mean, and then half these people will become your friends.
No, and that's true. And, there's so many different personalities, and a lot of different personalities can succeed. We have an injector here who's very good, who's a little bit opposite of personality than Noreen, kind of quiet, kind of very conservative. And over the years, she's attracted that clientele. And so you don't have to always be this great salesperson, right? I think the key, and I was talking about the best way to sell is through education. And I like what you said, to credential yourself. I always think, if I put myself in the shoe of the person you're about to treat, let them know why. What is it about you that they should feel comfortable about treating? And I tell you, in this business, I think if everybody you treat in your mind, you're thinking, I'm going to do everything I can to earn their business, right? And to make them look at me with trust that I can manage their aging for the rest of their life.
Right.
Which I think too often people think treatment. I'm just hoping that they let me treat them, and then instead of thinking, no, I'm going to take this person, I'm going to develop that trust where they trust me and they come back on a regular basis, even more so send you people. How do you handle the real needy client? The client, and we talked about, but there's some clients who they're needy. And they're going to come see you, and they try to monopolize a lot of time and stuff. I think that happens. How do you handle those people?
That can be a challenge, especially when they ask for your phone number.
Yes, yeah.
That just happened to me last week.
Mm-hmm.
And literally the next day, I had about 20 text messages. Yeah. I think you have to let them know that you're there, but that you're also busy. And so I tell people, if you email me a 2-page email, the likelihood of me getting back to you, unless it's I'm going to scan over your email, make sure there's nothing in there that I need to address right away, that you haven't had injections. But if you're asking me about all these different devices that we don't carry and that type of thing, I just let them know, I'm really busy, I'm back to back with appointments. When I get time, I'll get back to you. That is really hard, and I am not great at it. I'm really not, because they can suck the life out of you. And I've had a couple over the last couple weeks that it really does. And I would say I definitely need to get better at that, because I always feel bad for them. And I always, I want to take care of them. I want to hold their hands. But so I just try to tell them, we'll discuss it when you come in for your next appointment. Some of those people, I have them block out extra time, because I know that I'm going to be in there for much longer talking about the same thing we talked about the last 4 appointments. But they just really need that reassurance. I think being kind, they're still clients. I think some people just come in and want to talk.
Yeah. Well, and I think, there's a really good way to use being busy as a plus, right? Nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd. If you go into a restaurant at 7 o'clock at night on a Friday and it's dead, what is your thought? This place is not very good. And you go to a great one and you have to wait for an hour and a half. You don't like it, but you're thinking it's probably pretty good.
Right.
And so going back to your credibility that, hey, I'm busy. I'm booked up, 6-8 weeks ahead of time. That's a good thing. There's a reason you're booked up ahead of time. The other thing that I think is important is that in any industry, certain personalities will not click. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean the client is a bad person. We have a number of people here in our clinic who are seeing a different provider than they initially saw. And it didn't have to be anything adversarial. It was just like it wasn't quite the fit.
Right.
And that is okay. And instead of looking at it like, it's never comfortable saying, you're not going to say, I don't want to see you anymore. It's like, my style may not fit your style, but we've got some great people here. That's okay too.
Right.
It just doesn't matter. So, okay, let's get back up and something about you, probably the most impressive thing about you. And I analyze a lot of numbers, and I look at all kinds of nurses and PAs and nurse practitioners and doctors and look at what makes up their revenue. The vast majority of injectors do far more revenue in neurotoxins than fillers. You do more in fillers than you do in neurotoxins. You just have this gift for that. Why do you think that is? What is it about you that you do differently than the majority of injectors who, and maybe it's the path of least resistance, and neurotoxins a little easier, a little bit less expensive, but it's pretty rare you see somebody who does so much more filler than neurotoxins than you do. And why do you think that is?
Well, anytime they come in for neurotoxin, I'm always planting the seed. Well, you need a little bit in your cheeks. We need a lift here. And I've always got what I'm going to do next before they leave the appointment. So, like, if you ever want to read my note, we did 20 units of Botox or what have you. Next time we're going to do cheeks and temples. So we already know.
And the reason that is because she's so busy, she can't just say, oh, now let's just extend this appointment, we'll do it. So you're always looking ahead.
Yeah. So we always know, and I'm always assessing when they're there. They're like, when do I need to get my next filler? When you come to your next Botox appointment, we'll look at that. So I'm always trying to set them up for their next treatment. And this is the thing, we're losing so much volume over time. We're losing deep fat pad, superficial fat pads, and we get bony reabsorption. So everybody needs filler because we're all losing volume, and it's all going down to the lower part of our face. So we're trying to pick that back up. I love filler. It's kind of like art.
And I think that is, to me, that's what I would have said the number one thing, just from what I read, is you have a passion for it that's so good. And you guys, if you're an injector and you're in this, to be able to explain anatomy, and gravity yanks on our face every day, eventually it starts to win that fight. Like you said, it's pulling us south. And I think one of the things Noreen mentioned earlier that's so powerful is she's very good at immediately post-filler getting a picture before swelling takes place, so it's what the look you're looking for, and then she can show people that. It really gets them excited, doesn't it?
I love it. I think before and after pictures are so important, and there's nothing that makes me happier than an awesome before and after. Like, holy moly, look at the difference. This is just from filler this one day, and people are so happy. People want to see that because we're making subtle changes. Should not look like a different person. So when you put them side by side and they're like, oh my gosh, my marionette lines are so much better, they are so pleased when they leave. And then if they come back and they're like, I don't know if I have any filler left, it's only been 4 months, and we look back at their before, they're like, oh, never mind. Mm-hmm. So I think pictures are one of the most important things that you can do. If they leave, they're looking in the mirror when they leave, but they may have some bruising, they may have to start to have a little swelling. Sometimes they'll email you and say, hey, can I have my before and after? They want to show all their friends. I just think it's so powerful, and it credentials you as well. Like, look at the results.
No, and she's great at it. And it is. People learn visually way better than they learn verbally. Mm-hmm. So, the picture's worth 1,000 words. All right, so let's just take an overview. You've been in this industry now for 10 years, okay? From everything, I guess, you like it, right? You like it.
It's pretty good.
What is it that excites you about kind of the future and your future in this industry?
Gosh, all the new products that are going to be coming out. I mean, I think that we are just at the tip of the iceberg of what is to come. I think there's going to be a lot more biostimulators. So Sculptra, some other things coming out to make our body stimulate more collagen rather than just fillers. We're having new fillers come out that they have in Europe now. A new neurotoxin that's supposed to be coming out too, that's more longevity. I'm just always excited for the next thing that can be better than what we have now. Mm-hmm. Some of the fillers that we used, Restylane Lift is the first filler, regular Restylane, the first filler that was out, we still use today, which is still a great filler. But I think
think about it, it came out in 2004.
Yeah.
That's 18 years. Yeah.
It's just crazy. So I think that we're going to have more technology, so our products are going to be even better in all the different modalities. So treating the neck, which is one of the hardest things to treat now. Everybody hates their neck, the under eyes. So really fun things that now we can achieve, whenever we're, say, filler under the eyes. I haven't been able to train on it. Allergan now has an indication for infraorbital hollows, which is exciting, so I can go out and show other people how to do awesome things that we do every day, but we just can't train on them.
I agree, and I think that fact that there's always something new is wonderful. I also think that we're getting so much better at, instead of just doing one thing or two things, these multimodality plans where, let's say, we're going to look at your face and we know that filler and neurotoxins is going to address certain things, but it doesn't do anything for sun damage, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe some fine lines and wrinkles that you can. Or like you just said, boy, I can do some great stuff with my neck. Well, then we incorporate something like a soft wave or something, and really teaching. And that's why I love that our providers are taught not just one thing, not just two things, kind of have a rounded example, because I know even though the dominant thing for you is neurotoxins fillers, you also talk about other modalities.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, this is the thing. When people ask, what do I do first? Well, I always say, when you're looking at a bed, you want to change the bedspread before you change the mattress. So if you have all this sun damage, crepey skin, why would I just put filler in it first? Yeah, it's going to lift and elevate the tissue, but still the outer appearance is going to be terrible. So I really try to get people to do Halo BBL first, get the outer appearance of their skin looking good, and then we'll get their volume back up to where it's supposed to be. So I think that's super important, getting them on retinol, getting them on growth factors. It's not just one thing you do, it's everything you do together.
Well, and I love that analogy. You change the bedspread before the bed. I always say, if I give you a wonderful gift in ugly wrapping paper, it's not so good. And neurotoxins fillers don't do anything to the wrapping paper.
Right.
You got to address that too. So what advice would you have for any young or old, but somebody, a nurse practitioner, PA, whatever, that's thinking about getting into this industry? What advice would you have for yourself 10 years ago?
People ask me that all the time. How did I get into this industry? And I was one of the lucky ones. It just fell into my lap. I think that's the hardest thing. Most practices want experience. They want somebody coming in that kind of has a little bit of a following. So it's really hard going out and finding some of your own education. Getting education with injectables, with lasers is expensive. Mm-hmm. So if you have some skin in the game, you're going to be much more likely to be hired than somebody that is just applying at all these different places and they have no experience. They don't even really know the mechanism of action with Botox besides what they've seen on TikTok. And so going out there, investing some of your own money, getting some training, and then that's just starting, and then try to get hired on somewhere. I think that's the hardest thing is all these people want to get in this industry, but they don't have any skin in the game. So if you're trying to get in, investing some of your own money and getting a little bit of education just to kind of get the ball rolling.
No, I agree, and I've hired several injectors with no experience, and we're willing to take on that expense. But a lot of places, they can't afford that, they don't have the money. But what was really nice, our latest hire, Blake, came in. One of the things that impressed him is he had already done that. He'd already paid money to go to, I don't know if it's a pageant, is that one of the? Palette course, and he did another, he'd already injected some on his own, knowing when I go in there, that's going to give me a leg up on other people interviewing for the position, which it did. It just showed a commitment. It showed that I'm willing to invest some of my own money to get good. But there are places, obviously, our belief is kind of hire the smile, train the skill. As good as she is, 10 years ago, we could have helped train her and she would have been good. But one thing I couldn't teach is Noreen's ability to communicate, her passion, her work ethic. I mean, it's a little ridiculous. She works a lot, and then when she's not working here, she's training. She's got a strong work ethic. Just to let you know what an impressive injector is, I always look at weekly numbers. On her own, she generated almost $50,000 last week in 5 days. So she's a rare one. She's a good one. But last thing I want to talk about is just what do you love most about your job? When you think about, boy, I have to get up every morning, and I always tell people there's a way to think about work. I have to go to work or I get to go to work. There's people out there who, I know it's been paralyzed. My brother, sadly, is in the last stages of ALS. He would kill to go to work. Mm-hmm. I think we have a fun job. I think we're blessed. So you've been doing it for 10 years. I'm hoping you do it for another 30, all with here at Aesthetic Care. But how do you think about your job? What do you love about your job? What excites you? I know that you talked about the future excites you, but just right now, what excites you about your job?
I love coming to work every day, which, that sounds crazy. I really don't feel like I work. I am creating results for people, and it makes me excited. I don't ever wake up and be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go to work today, because my job is exciting. Every patient that I see that gets beautiful results is exciting.
And they're happy.
And they're happy.
To be there, yeah.
And also working here because the staff is very fun. I could just work in Liberty, but I want to work in Leawood because I love working with all the people that I work with. And that's a big thing. I think I told Matt a long time ago, I said, you could pay me half as much and I would still want to work here. And I don't want to do that.
I didn't do it. I should.
Because that is not something you get every day. And I think people coming to work and enjoying their job and smiling and laughing and joking around just makes life so much better. I mean, we spend more time working than we do at home with our family. So why not love your
Enjoy
job?
it. And, you know, one thing, and for any of you owners out there listening, Noreen has, I think, a unique perspective because she worked at a place that wasn't so good. And I'm not bragging this, but I do think we treat our staff well, and we've created a great family atmosphere. And if you're listening to this and you have a lot of turnover or you have a lot of infighting and gossip stuff, can't happen.
It's not. It wreaks havoc, and it also makes you, feel sick to your stomach going to work. And so, I look back and I'm like, I will never be in a situation like that ever again, because I didn't realize how much it affected my whole life. It affected how I treated my kids. It affected how I treated my spouse, because I was constantly anxious all the time. Just because when you're not appreciated and you just feel like you go to a workplace where there's constant chaos, it really, really impacts your whole life. So I say this all the time: don't ever work at a job you hate, or the people you work with. If they're not good people, there's always something that you can do to change that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think if you're a manager or owner, I think one of the most important thing you can do is focus all the time on creating a wonderful work atmosphere, because it brings the best out in people. I mean, Noreen, I believe, is probably a better injector because of the environment that she's in versus if she was stressed or whatever. So I just think it's critical. And the other thing is that I do believe our clients sense that.
Oh gosh, so clients that came and followed me from the last place I worked, they said, gosh, the waiting room here is so different. She was like, all you guys like each other. And I started laughing. She goes, it just, you can feel it, it's palpable. Everybody just is joking around and having fun, and that you guys can enjoy each other. And I go, you picked that up in 10 minutes? She goes, yes, because the other place, you could cut the tension with a knife. It just felt very cold, very sterile. And so you don't want that. You want people to enjoy coming, being able to laugh and joke around.
Well, we love what we do. It's fun. It's fun when we have great people like Noreen, and thank you so much for taking the time to do that. I hope you all got a lot out of this. We've got all kinds of great podcasts coming up, so stay tuned. You're going to be hearing a lot from us, and hopefully it'll give you some tips here and there to make your clinic and your career better. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. We would love it if you left a review to help other providers and clinics find us. Also, if you want more information about anything we discussed in this episode, check out our show notes. Until next time, this has been the Making a Multi-Million-Dollar Med Spa podcast.